Apparently my sister got divorced.
One day, my husband came back from work and told me this. My sister-in-law is beautiful but has a tough personality, and I find her a bit difficult to get along with. Her husband seemed a kind person, so I wonder why they got divorced. My husband hasn't heard the reason himself, as it was just hearsay from his mother. Oh. Did your sister have a job? In the course of casual conversation, I asked, and it turns out my sister-in-law had been a housewife ever since she got married.
Seems like she got custody, so maybe it was her husband's affair or something. It's hard to imagine her husband doing something like that, but well, there might have been things between them that we don't know about.
If she doesn't work and gets custody, it will be tough for her for a while, I said, listening as if it were someone else's business. Even though she's my sister-in-law, I haven't met her much, and she lives in a different state. Looking back now, this was the beginning of it all. My name is Sandy. I'm 31 years old and in my 3rd year of marriage. Until we have children, I want to keep working as usual, so I've been working hard at the venture company where I've been employed. My husband, Keith, is the same age as me and was my college classmate. We reunited a few years ago when we went to see the circle's activities together after being invited by friends. We were both single at the time, so we started spending more time together, which eventually led to dating and marriage. Our wedding was also a wonderful memory. My sister-in-law and her family attended our wedding. They had their 5-year-old daughter with them. Her husband actively came to greet us and seemed like someone who takes care of his wife and child. I thought he seemed a bit timid, like he might be under his sister-in-law's thumb. However, he had a gentle demeanor and I remember him being a good person. A few days after hearing that my sister-in-law got divorced, my husband told me the reason behind it. Apparently, her husband had been having an affair with a younger colleague from work and abandoned his wife and child. He forced her to sign the divorce papers and even canceled the lease on the apartment they were renting without her consent. As a result, she has to move out by the end of this month, and my sister-in-law is desperately looking for a new job and a new place to live. It's surprising because he didn't seem that kind of person. It goes to show that looks can be deceiving, or maybe he was just good at putting on a facade. It's really unexpected for things to turn out like this all of a sudden. My sister-in-law must be going through a lot, having to find a new job and a new place to live.
She might end up coming back to our parents' house.
Our parents-in-law live about a 30-minute drive away from us. Both of them are still healthy, so it would be practical for her to stay there for the time being. Looking back, I feel like I could give a lecture to my past self who was so carefree about these things. A week later, while I was relaxing on my day off, Keith said,
I'm going to my sister's place for a bit.
Come to think of it, it's almost the end of the month. They have to move out by then. Maybe he's going to help them get ready to move. In my relaxed state, I absent-mindedly thought about that and sent my husband off with a casual take care in a somewhat absent-minded tone. A few hours later, while having a late lunch, Keith came home. Welcome back, I said, heading towards the entrance, only to be greeted by a surprising sight. Huh? Sister-in-law? What's all this luggage? My sister-in-law was there with her daughter, while Keith was bringing in large pieces of luggage through the doorway.
Sandy, long time no see.
My sister-in-law greeted me with a smile, but it felt somewhat unpleasant. I had always felt this way, but her smile seemed condescending. Claire, her daughter, had already grown into an elementary school student since the last time I saw her. As I began to tidy up the table, thinking there might be something to discuss, Keith came out with something outrageous.
We'll be supporting them from today.
I was left dumbfounded, not understanding what he meant. Seeing my bewildered expression, Keith emphasized his point.
If you don't like it, we'll get a divorce.
Finally grasping what he was saying, I couldn't help but shout. What? Why? At that moment, both Keith and my sister-in-law looked at me with sharp eyes. No, even if they look at me like that, it's insane to just go along with it, isn't it? I didn't know what to ask next, and no words came out. Then Keith started talking on his own.
My sister is going through a tough time right now. She got divorced because of her husband's affair, and they haven't even discussed alimony or child support. It's not easy for her to work either, especially with Claire still in elementary school, you know.
While I sympathize with her situation of being divorced because of an affair, to be frank, there are plenty of people like that in the world. Even with a child in elementary school, many people manage to work. Certainly, it must be tough if she just got divorced and hasn't secured a job or a home yet, but supporting them? In just a few seconds, my mind raced through various possibilities until I reached a conclusion. Oh, I see. So, you mean they'll be living here for a while? Right, Keith just didn't explain it well. Until she finds a job and a place to live, they'll stay here for a bit. If only he'd said that. Honestly, Keith always struggles with choosing his words. Just as I was relieved.
Huh? What are you talking about? Well, maybe until Claire becomes an adult.
Upon hearing those words, my sister-in-law nodded in agreement. Wait, is that even a thing? I thought it was a pretty silly question coming from me, but I blurted it out.
But they're family and they're in trouble. Are you saying we should just ignore them?
I didn't say that. Why support them until the child becomes an adult? Is my sister-in-law not planning to work until then? And is it just unconditional support without any plans for repaying once she finds a job or contributes to living expenses? Why on earth? Why did you decide something like that on your own? Then, for some reason, he began speaking in a condescending tone.
Well, because I'm the head of this household. It's my responsibility to decide who lives here and how we manage our finances, isn't it?
That's one of Keith's flaws. It's like there's a switch in him that suddenly turns on his condescending attitude. And usually, it leads to something troublesome. He's the type of person who strangely feels responsible for everything and insists on leaving everything to him without any basis. Back in our student days, there were many situations like that, and he wasn't even considered as a potential boyfriend. But since we reunited, that aspect seemed to have disappeared. I thought he had learned from his experiences as he got older, but it seems like that's not the case after all. Keith comes up with his own family plan.
If we have children, my experienced sister can take care of them, so you can immediately return to work after giving birth, Sandy. Claire can also become like a big sister. Isn't it great?
Huh? I don't get it. I have no clue what this person is thinking. Understanding seems impossible. When he says such absurd things, it oddly makes me calmer, and I just replied flatly. No, that's impossible. First of all, why should we support your sister and Claire? Temporary support might be understandable, but until she's an adult? Is your sister not planning to work? Besides, if I have my own child, I want to raise them myself. Why should I have to leave my child to someone else and work? I'll take maternity and childcare leave, so there's no problem. In fact, I'd prefer not to have someone else in the house during those times. After saying that much, my sister-in-law, who had been silent until then, spoke up.
Oh, come on, we're family, aren't we? Don't say such cold things. Sandy, you love your job and earn quite well, don't you? So, even if you have a child, you wouldn't want to quit your job, right? And besides, if you earn that much, it's only natural for you to support me and Claire, right? I've raised Claire all by myself until now, so it's not a problem.
Her smile was devilish. Claire is, to put it mildly, not a good kid. Even after not seeing each other for a while, she doesn't even greet me, and when I try to talk to her, she ignores me. I thought maybe she's just nervous, but an elementary schooler should be able to greet. Despite not greeting me, she has an impudent attitude and demands snacks and juice in a manner not typical of an elementary student. While I do feel sorry for her being swayed by her parents' circumstances, I don't have confidence in getting along with this child. Initially, I thought maybe if it was just for a short while, but no, absolutely not. Even for a short time, living together with her is out of the question. I made up my mind to firmly refuse. Then Keith rushed for a response.
Anyway, we'll support them ourselves. Isn't that fine?
No. It's not fine. I wanted to retort internally, but I couldn't find the right words that wouldn't cause conflict, so nothing came out.
Isn't it okay? If you don't like it, then divorce is the only option.
At that moment, Keith's expression oddly looked down on me, much like my sister-in-law. A chill ran down my spine at that expression, and I made my decision. Are you really okay with that? When I said that, Keith seemed to not understand, so I said it again. Are you really okay with getting a divorce? Then, Keith suddenly became angry.
What? Divorce? Divorce over something like this? I didn't think you were such a cold-hearted woman. Don't come back until you've reflected on your actions.
Keith probably thought I would comply if he brought up divorce. I wanted to ask where his confidence came from, but before I could, I was kicked out. Barely managing to pack what I needed for work and clothes into a travel bag, I booked an economy hotel near the station for now. As I calmed down, my anger started to bubble up gradually. Not just towards Keith, but also towards my sister-in-law and Claire. Their attitudes were infuriating. 3 days. I'll settle things in 3 days. With that decision made, I took 3 days off starting from the next day. First, I went to get divorce papers and filled out my section. Then I went to a real estate agent to look for a new place. I consulted with an acquaintance who's a lawyer. I arranged for a move company. Everything is prepared. I called Keith, telling him I needed to talk.
So, you've finally come to your senses. Come back soon.
It seems Keith thinks I'll just come back. I returned home while Keith was there. My sister-in-law and Claire were lounging around, making a mess everywhere. It used to keep things relatively tidy, so seeing that scene only fueled my anger further. But Keith, completely unaware of such matters, suddenly started talking.
So, about what's going to happen from now on, you need to increase the money you bring into the household. Since my sister is busy with childcare, household chores will still be Sandy's responsibility as usual. Also, about what happened the other day, I'm a forgiving person, so if you apologize properly, I'll forgive you. So, start by apologizing.
It seemed like Keith's sense of justice had gone in a strange direction, as he was only saying outrageous things. I took out the divorce papers and told Keith, "There's no way I'm apologizing. I'm never coming back. Fill this in now." Then, Keith flew into a rage.
Divorce? Are you kidding me? You should just be serving me. Remember, I'm the one who took you in when you didn't have a boyfriend. Who else would want you once you're divorced?
Did he really marry me with that intention? It's true that I didn't have a boyfriend for a few years before dating Keith. But he has no right to say such things. Who would serve someone like you? I'd rather be divorced and single than continue this marriage to support someone else. Keith, boiling with rage, slammed the table and came towards me. Keith's feeble punch ripped against. Actually, I used to do kickboxing for exercise. As I dodged his attack and almost instinctively prepared to retaliate, the doorbell rang. The room fell silent. I ignored it and opened the door. Standing there was the lawyer I had called for. I had asked them to wait nearby in case something happened. By the way, when I returned home, I had left my phone in the living room to record the conversation. So, I have solid evidence of Keith attacking me on camera. They were dazed by the lawyer's appearance. I asked the lawyer to remain silent and stated my demands. As I said earlier, being with someone like you is impossible. Supporting others is also out of the question. By the way, I want to ask, are you spending over $500 every month on a card? What's that for?
Ha! It's my card, so I can spend it on whatever I want.
What? What are you saying? That's my family card. I checked the statement and you're using it at women's clothing stores and accessory shops, right? Are you spending it on strippers or something?
I wouldn't go to a strip club. Obviously, I spent it on Hillary.
Hillary? The atmosphere in the room froze. I never heard of that name. It seemed Keith, still boiling with anger, let it slip out accidentally. So, he was cheating after all. That means I was just a source of money. Keith realized his slip of the tongue and started to make excuses frantically, but I didn't want to hear any of it. I had it all recorded, and the lawyer was there, too. I decided to put the divorce papers on hold and left the house with the lawyer. I moved into my new house right away. The next day, the moving company took all my belongings from the old house, leaving only Keith's stuff behind. Then, I told him that I would be terminating the lease for this house. Originally, this was the apartment I had rented, and Keith had moved in after we got married because it was spacious. So, canceling the lease was straightforward.
Sandy, I only love you. Please think again.
Even if he spouted such cliched lines, they didn't affect me at all. Someone like that wouldn't cheat. I've had enough of being used as a walking wallet. Be prepared for various claims from the lawyer later. Hurry up and find a new home and support your sister and niece. I said it with a genuine smile. Afterward, I filed for compensation for his infidelity, added on the amount he squandered, and divided our assets. His affair partner turned out to be a classmate from college. I knew her too. Of course, she also had to pay compensation. By the way, my sister-in-law claimed that her husband cheated on her, but it turns out she was the one having an affair, which led to the divorce. As for why her kind husband didn't take custody of their daughter, it's because Claire was actually the child of her affair partner. Naturally, my sister-in-law was the one being sued for compensation. She was kicked out by her parents when they found out about it. No wonder she didn't go back home. It seems Keith formed a bond with his sister and was fueled by a strange sense of righteousness to protect my sister-in-law. My in-laws were utterly appalled by the fact that both siblings divorced due to infidelity, but they were closely monitored and called back home for re-education. My sister-in-law apparently started working in her hometown. As for me, the compensation is being paid promptly every month. I'm relieved I'm not being exploited anymore. Now, let's go to work with enthusiasm and do my best today.